Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidates interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Andrea Kaminsky, and I would like to introduce Bobby Gronert, running for Alder in District 8. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
As we begin, please give an opening statement about the educational, vocational, and civic experience that you have, which prepares you for this office and why you're running for Alder.
Of course, I'm a student at Madison right now, so I don't have a degree or anything yet, but I've been active in politics for about 5 years now. I'm in Milwaukee. I was in the Democratic Socialist of America there. I think that was a great experience there. I got to work with candidates like Madison, Ryan Clancy, in their election campaigns. I served in my school board in high school, which was a great experience of seeing, how the municipal budget function. Even at a smaller local level in a small village, we're managing $32 million a year. How do we respond to the state when they attack school districts? How do we respond to, the teachers union? How do we fight for people who don't get a seat at the table necessarily? And here I've been on the ASM, the Associate Students of Madison, and I also there managing, another very large multi-million-dollar budget there, and getting to interact with my peers, with my students, my friends, and being able to see, what students need, what students are concerned about. And I think outside of that, again, I've just been active in socialist politics in Milwaukee and Madison for about 5 years now. I've phoned back for canvass in every year for some election in the past 5 years, and I've just loved getting to meet my community members, getting to help, empower those who want to lift up, the people who really make this state so great and make Madison and Milwaukee such great cities.
Great. How would you evaluate the city's current efforts to address homelessness and increase the amount of affordable housing?
I think we've made some good first steps. I think that the Housing Forward initiative has a lot of good ideas in it, but I think we can expand on them. I think that, for one, we need to focus on building public housing. When we give the private market control, we are, first of all, saying that we're okay with the private market deciding how the solution is found. And a solution from the private market will always mean some people don't get it because that's how the market works. But also, we're giving up our control over the problem itself to the private market. There's a place for private development in the solution, but we need to be also building public housing. We need to be, building larger shelters. I think the current shelter is being replaced with a shelter with a lower max capacity, which doesn't really make sense because it means that in the winter, there'll be more people outside the shelter than there was this year. So I think that we need to focus on, just building public housing in the long term, and then in the short term, providing warming spaces in the winter, providing shelters that have larger capacities, not smaller capacities, and just focusing on trying to, both in the long and short end, attack the problem from a public perspective where we still have control over the problem itself.
Okay. Any additional steps that you think the city should take on that issue?
I think that the potential with this, state election this year for more funding coming to Madison than usual. We've had, I'd say, attacks just plainly on Madison from Robin Vos in the current assembly. I think that with potentially a Democratic trifecta, we could see more funding for more programs, for more building, more housing, but also more programs for those who are currently homeless. So I'm excited to see where the future lies after this next election and where we can work with the state to be able to get more, credit for funding, where we can do more zoning, which currently is preempted by the state. A lot of zoning practices, doing more affordable zoning if that would be possible, working more with co-ops. I think those are the main, again, just firstly though, building affordable housing, if we're doing private development, land banking so that we can at least put some restrictions on the private developers. I think those are two big steps, land banking and the public housing.
Okay. What actions or programs would you support to enhance community safety in Madison?
I think that, community safety is extremely important here in Madison. I think that one of the things that students are passionate about, for sure, is the current bar raids. There was a big uproar over that this past fall. I think that, while it might sound a bit silly, there is actually truth to the issue. I'd rather have students going out on State Street, some freshmen a quarter mile home from the dorms in a public environment than in some frat house in Langton where there's a lot less people around who can help, maybe people around who don't want to help. We see a lot higher risks of particularly sexual assault at those frat houses than we do, say, in a club on State Street. Something that, you recognize that, yes, there are laws from the state and federal government about drinking, but at the same time, we want to push people towards being in safer spaces. And I think also, mental health response should happen for mental health responders. I was actually yesterday at a club and someone fainted. They hit their head on the wall as they fell down. It was very, very scary. When the first person there, when we call 911 and ask for paramedics, was a police officer. And police have their place, but when it comes to injuries or mental health crises, we need professionals with medical expertise there. We need mental health responders, like with the CARES program, or we need paramedics. I think we should really work on keeping the CARES program strong and trying to expand it where we can, and then again with the safe drinking environments.
Mm-hmm. How should Madison balance the need for development with other concerns such as traffic, historic preservation, and conservation of natural areas?
I think that there is certainly an importance to those other concerns, but in my opinion, when you have people, literally freezing in the street, literally left out in the cold on the curb, the first priority needs to be building more housing. The first priority needs to be removing frankly, the moral stain in our society. It should be an affront to our society that in the richest country in the world, in a pretty rich place like Dane County, like Madison, we have people out in the street every year in the thousands, honestly. I think that, we should try and make sure that, especially with environmental concerns, especially with equity, we're not doing anything to harm those already here, already in houses. But, if I had the choice to preserve some building from 60 years ago or get 50 people into housing, I will always choose 50 people being in housing. I think that maybe with environmental concerns, maybe that changes because there's a lot, there's health impacts there and all. But I think that when it comes down to it, we need to consider, if you were out in the street, what would you want the response from your elder to be? And it probably would not be preserving a historical building, although where we can, we should do that.
Okay. When faced with making difficult, controversial decisions, how will you ensure that you're getting input from residents with a broad range of perspectives?
Yeah, again, my school board in high school, there were multiple big decisions. One was over the teachers union. They had a salary schedule that the board didn't want to keep implementing. And that was a big issue. It was, where should the funding go? Where should it go to the capital fund, or should it go to fulfilling our previously agreed to agreement with the teachers? And initially the entire board was against giving it to teachers. But I'd say partially through my work, partially through community response, the teachers union ended up getting about half what they wanted, half what the board wanted. I think I've learned in the past, in my experience in smaller levels of government, student government and local government in a smaller village, how to work with those that I don't agree with and how to get community input on my decisions. Particularly in this district, I'd love to, be active in going to all the student groups. If there's something about potentially funding a legal fund for abortion, those who need an abortion, going to the Planned Parenthood Club and talking to them about, hey, what have you guys seen elsewhere? Where are you guys coming from? What do you guys want? I think that being in this district, we have a great advantage of having a lot of different students who care about a lot of different things. Someone always cares about everything that's on the agenda. Every vote, some student's going to have something to say about. So I think really reaching out to students, whether on their own or in organizations, is a really big part of getting that community input and being able to represent the students and workers of District 8 the best.
Okay. What are the most critical issues that we have not yet addressed that you see facing the people in your district, and what would you propose to address these?
I think particularly we have to mention the ongoing attacks by the federal administration on not just funding for the education, which of course impacts us greatly at Madison, but also with ICE just punishing cities that didn't vote for Donald Trump. They're going to Minneapolis and Chicago and LA and New York. They're not going to Dallas. They're not going to Little Rock or Fayetteville because they want to punish those who did not support Donald Trump. I think they're going to come here soon. We need to be prepared to protect our international students, our Hispanic residents, our residents of any others, honestly, who don't look white, because ICE is just, if you are diverse or if you're making a problem, they're going after you. I think we need to make sure that as a city, we are not cooperating with ICE. We are not in any way furthering ICE's agenda of punishment and terror. And then outside of government capacity, as a community, and I will be upfront and working with Voces de la Frontera and other groups in their rapid response networks, being able to, whenever ICE comes to Madison, make their life as hard as we possibly can, because they're trying to rip apart our lives.
Okay. Finally, what would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
I'd say, I think that Madison's a great city. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think so. I think Wisconsin's my favorite state in the nation. Lived in a couple, but I wanted to live here for the rest of my life. But I think we can do more. We can do better. We can really, I think in the next coming decades, with the climate crisis, with the housing crisis, we have an opportunity to reimagine what Madison can be like, reimagine what our society can be like. I think that it's crucial not just to, improve upon what we have, but also revolutionize what we have as a city, revolutionize our idea of what a city can be and what Madison can be. I think that we need a long-term, future-focused movement of students and workers. I'm trying to build that here in District 8, trying to build something that can last beyond me. When you're voting on April 7th, my name on the ballot, but it's not me on the ballot. It's a movement trying to change the city, trying to make the city better than it is currently. And so yeah, this will last beyond me and last beyond my name, but it just happens to be my name on the ballot, and just happens to be me here right now under the bright lights.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Bobby Gronert for speaking with us and thank the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. I want to remind everyone that the election is Tuesday, April 7th. Every election is important. Please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I thank you for joining us.